scripture this morning comes from the first Psalm. Blessed is the man who does not walk in the counsel of the wicked, or stand in the way of sinners, or sit in the seat of the mockers. But his delight is in the law of the Lord, and on his law he meditates day and night. He is like a tree planted by streams of water, which yields its fruit in its season, and whose leaf does not wither. Whatever he does prospers. Not so with the wicked. They are like chaff that the wind blows away. Therefore the wicked will not stand in judgment, nor sinners in the assembly of the righteous. For the Lord watches over the way of the righteous, but the way of the wicked will perish. It's my pleasure this morning to welcome each and every one of you to our chapel service. This is a significant day, a particularly important day in the life of our great institution. 140 years old, and we are having this ceremony today because we're bringing the Webbs back to the bell buckle, the Webb family from Knoxville back to Bell Buckle to be a part of it, and we're so excited about it. So we welcome parents. Being a part of this ceremony is important to us, and we're delighted that this senior class is a part of it as well, for it is a significant time in your lives as you get your blazers, but as you hear a bit more about the great and rich traditions of your school, the Webb School. So I welcome each and every one of you here. Today is Sonny Webb's 167th birthday. That's a long time. And we're happy that he is a part of our rich tradition and of our heritage. And so I welcome you all and am delighted that you're here. And now it gives me great pleasure to welcome back to the podium someone that many of you know, and that is the chairman of our Board of Trustees, Mr. Phil Cook, who, interestingly enough, taught at the Webb School in Knoxville for several years after graduating from here and then graduating from Harvard. He came back from Harvard and taught at Bell Buckle, and so he knows the Webb family, taught at Webb Knoxville, and so he knows the Webb family in Knoxville very, very well. And so, Phil, it's a pleasure to introduce you, who will introduce our speaker. Thanks, Warren.
Truly my pleasure today to introduce two of our special guests, and I hope you'll help me make them very, very welcome. On my left is Susie Webb Reese from Nashville, Tennessee. Susie is old Sonny's great-granddaughter. She's an artist. She has also agreed to serve on the Webb School Bell Buckle's Historic Preservation Committee, giving of her time and energy to help us pull together some of our documentation and traditions and build our archives. And we're very happy to have her here today. I will tell you she has one other part of her resume that truly rises above all else. She was one of my students at Webb Knoxville. Please welcome Susie Webb. Webb School of Knoxville was founded by a man named Bob Webb, who would have been old Sonny's grandson. A man that I truly, I feel like I'm truly blessed for having known. I met Bob Webb when I was only barely older than you guys, having just graduated from college and had the audacity to believe that I could teach anybody anything. Bob Webb had some faith in me and asked me to come down and teach science at his school. I taught there for 3 years, and I must tell you, Bob Webb was truly a gentleman. He was one of the kindest, most involved people I've ever met. And that's a great trait to have in a head of school, because all the students looked to him for mentorship and leadership, and he gave it. I learned this lesson about him being a gentleman the hard way. I'll tell this story very shortly, but I must tell you that moving from Boston to Knoxville was major culture shock. A little like Mars to Venus, I don't know, it was pretty rough on me. And so I would save my money every weekend, every paycheck, and get just enough money to fly back to Boston, rather than spend my weekends in Knoxville. Back then, one didn't get on an airplane unless you were suitably dressed. Coat and tie were absolutely what you wore on an airplane. And one Sunday, I headed back to Knoxville on the airplane, and I was not dressed properly. I can't believe I'm saying this, striped bell bottoms, that was the setting. a big newspaper under my arm. All I would do was get on that airplane and head back to Knoxville. I probably wasn't even shaven. And in those days, you didn't have jetways. You had to walk out on the ramp to get to the airplane. I was late. I was running out to the ramp, and just as I got to the little staircase, I bumped into somebody, turned to apologize, and it was my boss, Bob Webb, with his chairman of the board, Mr. Ellis. And anybody else would have taken one look at me and said, I don't know him, I'm going to pretend like it's impossible. But Bob Webb said nothing about the way I was dressed, greeted me very courteously, asked me to sit with he and the chairman of the board, which was a lot of fun, on that flight back to Knoxville, making small talk, dressed the way I was, and Bob never mentioned it again. A long time after that, Bob and Julie were out for dinner one night with some friends of ours, and he did generally ask me if I'd gotten over missing Boston yet. So he clearly had not forgotten about it. Bob Webb actually was a student at Webb Knoxville, at Webb Bellbuckle, having joined the school in 1933, and after graduating from college, came back here to teach for several years here on campus. And in 1949, he married to his wife Julie, and the two of them came to Bellbuckle to set up housekeeping, and he taught here. And in fact, Susie was born in Bellbuckle, I think, while they were teaching me. So this is a part of a family that's not only connected to Webb Knoxville, but frankly connected to Webb Bellbuckle too. I am absolutely delighted to introduce to you today one of the nicest people I've ever met, a woman who has contributed enormously to private school education in Knoxville, who continues to contribute to the community in her role as a community leader in Knoxville. And she's going to speak to you guys for a few minutes today about the Webb family and its traditions. Julie Webb.
Mr. Bondura, Webb School faculty, young women and young men, friends, and Mr. Cook, who, by the way, taught Susie ecology 40 years ago in Webb School in Knoxville. It's a joy to be back in Bellbuckle today to help you celebrate Sonny's 167th birthday. I've had the pleasure of being associated with all three Webb schools. This, the original Webb School, the Webb School of California, and the Webb School of Knoxville. And Bob Webb taught at all three of those schools, so I got to be there with him. This morning I want to talk to you about some of the early history of this school and Old Sonny's values. I also want to tell you a bit about my life here. Can you hear me? No. My life here, and a little bit about the other two Webb schools and the connections between the three. When W.R. Old Sonny Webb was a Civil War veteran and graduate of the University of North Carolina, he headed to Tennessee in 1870 to found a boarding school. He could not have known he was to be a progenitor of a line of educators. One son succeeded him, another founded the Webb School of California, and another son's son founded the Webb School of Knoxville. And other grandsons have been a dean, 4 college professors, and 2 headmasters of independent schools. This was the opening statement of the Asheville School's Award of Merit given to Bob Webb in 1981. Sonny Webb was a 27-year-old veteran who wanted to teach school. Tennessee was the quietest and least troubled of the southern states. So, in 1870, he crossed the mountain from his home state of North Carolina to the village of Culleoka, near Columbia in Tennessee. This young man, a student of the classics, had a definite idea of the type of school he wanted to be part of. He wanted to give a sound classical education, one that would prepare boys well for college. This was unique in the state at that time. No public schools to speak of, and none whose aim was exclusively preparation for college. He began in 1870 at the Culleoka Institute in the basement of a church. It was so damp